I'm sorry, guys.
It sounded fine to me.
Out of tune.
Maple
Maple
syrup.
syrup.
Hey,
Hey,
everybody.
Awesome.
welcome back. Yeah, it is the Maple Syrup Show, and this is the first show of 2024. Kat and I decided to take a much-needed break over the holidays, and I think we're better for it. Kat, are you better for it?
I mean, partly I had the COVID, so I didn't get to choose.
Yeah,
But
you would have
yes,
been here anyway.
I'm considerably less COVID now, which is my favorite. In fact, I'm at 0% COVID, as I understand it. So
I think that's a wonderful place to be. I don't think
yeah,
anybody should be at any percent COVID at any time in their lives. To be
no,
honest, I mean, like,
no, I'm
really.
100% in favor of that.
Well, everybody, we have Jim with us today. Jim, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. And are you 100% COVID free?
I am, thankfully. I avoided it at all costs over the holidays. It was a busy holidays with lots and lots of parties and people, so I was kind of dodging bullets here and there, but luckily we came out. Everyone's safe, so we're good.
That's
I
good,
was
that's
lucky
good.
to receive mine just in time for the holidays. So
Uh,
yeah, we actually just had our delayed Christmas Day today. So
Oh, well, there you go.
just the rest of the unwrapping of presents. George still made us a turkey on the day and stuff. But yeah, so that was fun.
That's
it was
good.
fun.
So, I mean, like, it's not the end of the world. It's just like 2 weeks late, or more than 2 weeks late. It's almost like
A month.
a month late. Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe it is the end of the world. I don't know.
No, it was fine. It was nice. We got to unwrap. So we do a little thing. I'm just going to tell you about it. As part of sort of a gratitude project for ourselves, because I'm compulsive about buying new board games when they come out. I have to have it,
I
and
think
then I
lots of
forget
us are
about it.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've started this little tradition last year because we had so many boxes that were still in shrink. We just wrapped the whole lot because it's pretty lonely being here. Like all of our families are somewhere else, and there was just nothing under the tree, and it looked a bit sort of. And then we had our entire collection basically under the tree. This
Mhm.
year, we just wrapped the ones that we got this year that we were sure were ones that were probably from this year. So we just unwrapped those instead. So it wasn't quite as like OTT. But it was neat to rediscover them and be like, oh, this is a hot game now. I didn't know that when I backed it on Kickstarter. So yeah, that's been my day. It's been fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And you just got back from swimming with the kids.
Yes, at the pool where I was saying I love the waiting room because of the humidity. I'm a big humidity person. I'm actually my favorite environment is a humid environment. So when I get to
And
go
do
and
you live?
sit, and, yeah,
Where do you live?
in Quebec, Canada. So
That's not
it's
very humid.
no, not at all. That's
Well, I mean, it is if you consider that snow is a form of humidity.
Isn't it drier when
it's
there's snow?
cold.
Oh, I don't know. This is a science
I
conversation.
don't know.
I don't know
I
the
am not a
answer. Tell us in
meteorologist.
the comments if you know.
Yeah.
There are no comments. Where are you all? Is everyone here? Where
Well,
are
I
you?
don't
Tell
know.
us
I
that
I
you're
see
here.
people
Wave.
watching, but I don't see their comments yet. So we'll see. If you are watching right now, please do let us know that you're there. Chat in the comments. We'll say hello. It's lovely.
Hi,
And
George.
there's George.
That's
Hi,
good.
George.
Good news.
And if you can, it's a new year. If you want to tell us your New Year's resolution, what is going to happen in 2024 for you? What are you looking forward to, especially related to maybe game design? That'd be super cool. We would love to
Yeah.
hear from you. Sean Richardson, Amy is here. Lovely, lovely, lovely to see you all. So a lot of the West Coasters. There you go. Yeah. So I'm actually gonna look up this thing. It does snow.
Oh, yeah.
Count
What's the
as
humidity for snow?
humidity.
Is snow drier or well, while you're doing that, Jim, tell us your origin story. What got you into board game design, the board game industry? Like how did we, first get a Jim in this environment?
Yeah, how did it get its fingers around me?
Mm.
Yeah, so I think for me it was like, long story short, I always grew up with games, playing games and whatnot. And then as I got older into like sort of my teenage years, there was occasional game nights and stuff like that, and we had a lot of fun with that. But then as everyone kind of went to college and university, it got harder. Um, but I was always still much involved with games. I was an entrepreneur. I had my own indoor paintball field in Toronto, so I was constantly
That's
like
cool.
Yeah, so I was constantly running games and doing game related type stuff, inventing new games for kids and parties. Um, and then, yeah, when I moved to Montreal for a marketing job, I was missing that sort of that game thing. So it just wasn't in my life anymore. So that's when I discovered I was, I guess, doing video games as sort of like, because I didn't have the group or the people to do board gaming. And I'm a big fan of the XCOM games. So when I had XCOM and then I saw that there was an XCOM board game, and then I was like, but I don't have any friends here yet. I don't know anybody. I'm not going to play this. And then I saw it plays solo. And I was like, well, what is this? Solo board games? What is this?
What
So
is that? Yes.
yeah, so I ended up picking it up and I had rekindled this passion in me for board gaming. And ever since that game, I've just been picking up everything I can, especially if it plays single player, and just playing solo games. And that's sort of like how the board game bite hit me. And
Mm.
then since getting back into it and being like, oh my God, I have all these games now. Is there groups? Like, what can I do? And then, and
Non-solo or
yeah,
solo
like
together?
how do I find groups? So I found some amazing groups in Montreal here, and yeah, just started playing as much as I could whenever I could. And I'm still very much a solo board gamer. I love it. I love that experience, but very much also enjoy gaming with friends and the groups that we have.
Very cool. We
So
have
oh yes, hi Roberto.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Roberto.
I was going to ask you something actually in terms of solo board games. So for me, the whole principle of board games initially for most of my life is that we're doing that as a group. This is
Yeah.
something I do with the family. This is something I do with friends. This is something I do to kill time. It's, this is a drinking game, whatever, but solo, any of those things. But like with cards, which is something that I have just rediscovered recently, playing solitaire games makes a lot of sense. So if someone were out there were interested in getting themselves into solo board games, how did you approach it, and do you have any ideas for other people? Like, in a couple of sentences, not the whole.
Yeah, I think that for the best way to approach it is find something you're really interested in first and foremost. Like it has to be something that if you're going to do it by yourself, you got to really have the attention span for it and want to dive into it. So find something that you're really, really passionate about. See if there's a solo variant for that game, or if a game exists for that. Chances are it does. Everything has a solo mode nowadays. But that's sort of it, I think, is you once you get into it, you're going to start learning. Don't be discouraged if it's like a little bit too tough at first, because a lot of times when you have games, especially co-op games, you have multiple people thinking on things.
Yeah.
So it gets easier. So it can be tough when you're playing on your own, but there's a ton of groups online dedicated solely to solo play, and those are great communities to ask questions, to be a part of. So
one of them, I think, is called Solo Board Gamers. I think it's as straightforward as that. I've joined a bunch of those because, it fascinates me. I've actually only played one board game solo because George couldn't pick me up until 4 o'clock when I was at a board game store, and my friends had to leave at 3. And I was like, okay. And it was Canopy. And I think that was probably the wrong one for me to play solo as my first solo, because I'd never played it at all before. So that would be my only caveat, is if you're considering playing a game solo, learn the game a little bit first, because that made it really hard for me to understand how the game was supposed to work. I have since played it with another person and had much more fun, and would be fine to play it solo now. So yeah, that's my thing. How about you, Sen? Did you have any thoughts on solos?
No, not really. Except if you're interested in solo games, if you listen to, I can't remember. I'll look it up. We had Martin Pedersen, who designs the automata for Stonemaier games and things like that, on Ludology a while ago.
It was an amazing episode, yeah.
But it's a great episode because Martin almost convinced me that I'm a solo gamer, and I'm not a solo gamer. And it was episode 301. Wow. Yeah, Automa Factory, not Automata.
That's been a minute.
Automa Factory. Well, I mean, we're only at 315, so it
Oh, it
was
feels like it was so long ago.
it was 30 it's 30 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, no,
Um,
that has been a minute.
yeah. So, anyways, he's been involved with like viticulture and Gaia Project and Scythe and all those things. And he basically convinced me that maybe I am a solo gamer at heart. I think what I am is lazy. And I don't want to set it up and take it down if not a lot of people are going to benefit from it. And I don't like leaving things out, even though I do that sometimes. So I'm not the key demographic, except probably mentally I am. Like if it was an app and it was a solo gaming app, I would play that forever. In fact,
Yeah.
I do play like solo board gamey like apps that you can't play with other people because they're just video games that use board game mechanisms, right? Like Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a video game that uses deck building mechanisms. I'll play that forever. And so, yeah, I am a solo gamer in a lot of ways, but I am also lazy in that I don't want to take it out of the package and leave it on my
That's why I do
table.
puzzles on my phone because we have cats.
I
Right?
think too. So the reason that I gravitated so quickly towards solo gaming was at first I had a lot of sort of social anxiety about
Sure.
going and joining a big group and being a part of, this big event where there's lots of people and they're all playing games and I'm just new there. And for me also there was a language barrier at the time.
Mhm.
I didn't know
Of
French
course.
and it was predominantly a French speaking province here. So it was tough and it was a lot of anxiety kind of. So I think playing solo, getting into it and then slowly kind of getting into the groups
Mhm.
really helped me like just open up my horizons in terms of what can be done with
Cool.
board games.
And I think
So that-
Montreal has a really good culture in terms of board gaming as well. So there's like a
Yes.
Well,
lot of
the
cafes
French,
and whatnot.
like European kind of connection, that makes a lot of sense because I grew up in Europe and board games were such an important part of like just normal everyday society.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what they're called. They're society games, which
Yeah,
doesn't
jeu
mean
de
exactly
société.
society. It means like
Socializing.
socializing, yeah, rather than society per se. But I mean,
So Sean also says that there are also groups for playing board games online, right? So you can play. That's BGA
yes,
and
exactly.
even on Tabletop Simulator and other games, other systems like that, you
There
can
are a
get
bunch.
a lot of
Yeah.
virtual desktop, tabletop type things where you can play games and get your fix that way. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Oh, and by the way, yes, it actually is drier in winter because the cold weather makes snow. Now there has to be enough humidity in the air for the snow to actually form, but once it forms, then it's dry. So that's how it works.
Yes.
Okay.
I listened in science class.
But it's
teachers.
super cold and cold is not fun.
Yeah,
I love cold, except for the cold
Really?
that. Oh yeah,
Really?
another tangent. We just had a massive power cut last weekend, like 20 plus years, 20 plus hours,
Yeah.
and it went
it's brutal.
overnight.
Yeah.
And it was below zero. And I know Canadians, that's not that bad for you guys, but we're not used to it, and we don't have houses built for it. So if
Yeah,
there's no furnace going, we are going to die.
we were
Really?
at minus 17 yesterday, and that's
So
not
that's Celsius, right?
yeah, and that's not a lot
Yeah.
for me. Like I'm from up north where it's like minus 40, and that's still like I'll still go outside and ski in the minus 40. Like I've been at St. Anne and Tremblant in like ice storms skiing because
I mean,
that's
I
how much I
love
like
that
skiing.
stuff. I am out there in the negatives having a great time, but inside my house, that's not what
Oh
I
no,
expect. My
no.
mattress was frozen.
It's like I
sir.
like studying insects, but I don't like them in my house.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I like to draw mushrooms, so I don't want to eat them. Anyway,
Oh,
but yes.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
but my mattress was frozen.
Oh.
Frozen.
Oh. Oh, that's
Anyway.
yeah. Sean is saying like the dry snow here in Utah makes absolutely amazing steamers
Powder
and cook.
best.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I just
That's
made
brilliant.
I mean best. We don't use that symbol anymore, except for in when we're meaning something different. Negative
Okay.
18 centigrade. Goodness me. Where are you, Roberto? I lose
around
track. You're in Canada somewhere, I think.
Yeah. He's around the corner from Jim, I think.
Yeah, we're neighbors. We're in the
Nice.
same board game groups.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about board games,
Yeah,
actually.
let's talk about the topic we're here to actually bring Jim on, which is about passion projects. So Jim wrote this long that was a book. I thought it was I literally thought, like, are you like planning on writing like a memoir about yourself?
Well, it
Because
is
there's
kind of the beginning of that, kind of.
okay, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
It
what
feels
I
like
was
it.
showing you guys was sort of like, yeah, this is where we're going. But yeah, it's part of a greater thing.
Yeah. And so Jim came to us after we were talking about, who should we have on? And Jim said, I'd like to come on. And we said, okay. And he wanted to talk about, I'm talking about him like he's not here, Cat. He wanted to talk about,
Yes, Jim, we're talking about you, not to you right now.
he wanted to talk about coming to the industry or the game design field or whatever you want to call it with a
Yeah.
whole lot of passion, but nothing else. And a lot of people do that because they have an idea, right? They have an idea that I can make a game. I'm going to make a game. Let's
Often
make a
they have
game.
made a game, right?
Yeah, some people even
They've
have made a game.
I did this thing.
One second.
Yeah. But Jim had a really interesting way of looking at it. He talked about exploring who he was before he really dived into the whole process, right? So, Jim, first of all, can you tell us what was the passion project that spurred all of this?
Yeah. So I think to begin with, I was playing more board games in my life, and I was constantly, I guess, playing some types of games and certain games, and I was just always, I think, like a lot of people, looking at it and being like, I wonder if you kind of did this, or this would be a lot more interesting if this happened, or this sort of that happened. If maybe this game operated like this, it'd be a little bit more interesting. And I think it's this initial spark came from just kind of going, well, you know what? Like, why don't I do this? Why don't I set out on that path like everyone else? I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make a game. Like if I'm seeing all these things, then I don't know anything about board games at all. But I think I can do. I think I'd like to try.
Hmm.
And that's sort of how it sparked. I'd love to hear from you guys too, and find out sort of how that initial very first spark from you happened. But that
I
was
don't
it for
remember
me.
the first time I made a game.
No.
I'm the eldest. It was often my job to sort of distract the younger ones. I would use bits of other games. I would draw things or write things up. My dad did really cool birthday parties for us where that we had like a whole lot of tasks to complete and challenges and things like that. My uncle, my great uncle, used to make crosswords and things, and so we would send each other crosswords. I tried to make crosswords too from when I was little and things like that. So it's been my whole life has been about creating games and puzzles and entertainment and things. So I don't actually remember, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
I
about you,
think
Sam?
for me, I mean, I've been making games forever now, and uh, sorry, I can't see you because something's in front of the window. What I do remember though, is making any school project into a game. Everything was a game. I'd make a game when it was like, hey, you're gonna study ant colonies. Oh, that's a game. You're studying gravity. That's a game. So everything was a game. Whenever I had like a science fair project or something like that to do. But I do remember teaching my friends how to play Dungeons and Dragons using Lego. And I would make I made basically like a stripped down version of Dungeons and Dragons, with only D6s because I didn't have a polyhedral set myself. I used other people's dice for that. Because I was a 6-year-old kid playing with adults when I learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s. And
Wow,
so I
that's a
wanted
while ago.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I wanted all my friends my own age to play, but they were, like, not really good at imagination stuff yet. Um, and so we made it out of Lego. We made little minifigures, and they had weapons, and we made those weapons out of Lego, and I built a giant dragon, and there was, like, really kind of simplified rules of movement. Like you could move a number of studs across this big floor, and I made the walls and all that kind of stuff. So it was great. It was really fun for being that
That's
age.
super cool.
But yeah, I think a lot of people have that kind of story who were game designers. Like they just
Yeah.
started tinkering with the idea of making a game, and then at some point, it becomes this real passion to see that be something real.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like an adult project that you make. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I was designing RPGs before I'd ever heard of them. One of my friends remembers very clearly one that I came up with that I used to basically run that we played, and she still uses the name that she invented for herself in that as her login ID and things. And I had no recollection of it until she told me about it. But yeah, we were building a spaceship to go into space, but we had to, like, I think the clouds had to cover the sun in the right way for the portal to open or something. I don't know. I was 7. She remembers all the details. It's amazing.
It sounds like it really affected her life in positive
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's wicked.
I definitely like credit I think the the paintball field and owning that and coming up with stuff for parties as really sort of like here you go, you invent a game and everyone has to enjoy it and have fun, and they're paying you now some money to have a good time, so you got to get it right. So I would spend a lot of time thinking about the different age groups that come in and what they can handle and what they can't handle, and how dangerous it could be, because we're talking paintball, so you got to be very careful sometimes with how close people get, stuff like that.
But it has to be dangerous enough to be interesting and challenging. Even if there's no real danger, it has to feel that way.
Yeah,
There's all of that.
That's
Just, I
that
mean,
immersion factor for
sort of,
paintball for sure.
yeah.
Right?
Or any games for kids, really. Like when
And I
I was
think,
a kid,
Yeah, I
there was a
mean,
lot
maybe
of,
not danger, but risk.
cotton wooling us.
Yeah.
No, like literally danger was much more interesting.
I mean,
Cotton
maybe,
wooling,
sure.
like I was
What
again
is
the
that? What is that?
eldest, and
What
so
does
I
that
was
mean?
very.
What
What
does
do you
that
mean?
mean?
Being
What
cotton
you
wool?
the word you just said?
Cotton wool.
Yeah.
Being packed in cotton wool. I
Oh,
don't know what.
cotton wooling.
Yes,
Oh, okay, okay.
cotton wooling
Yes, I
kids
see.
and sort of
Being protective,
overprotecting
like
them.
kids' gloves,
Yeah.
like
Yes,
wearing.
it
Yes,
doesn't
okay.
actually, those kids don't actually get to develop a lot of the things they need to be successful adults. And I'm not saying you should just like let your kid go play in the stream or in traffic or something, but like let them fall and let them stand up by themselves, kind of thing. No
Yeah,
children, easy for me to say.
right,
Anyway, I'm an aunt. When they fall over and they don't get over it, I give them back.
right.
Um,
Roberto's saying that when he used to present to a room of retail executives in his previous career, he turned the presentations into games, which is a great way to keep the audience engaged. Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
Yeah,
sure.
my partner Jay often does that as well. Like he turns all of the training events that he was in charge of into games as well. So they're like gamified training training days, and they are like legendary within his business. Like, oh man, remember when Jay did that? Remember when Jay made us do this? People love it, and they learn from it too, right? So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think like once I had the idea, like, oh hey, I'm gonna make a game, or I can just do it myself. I think that's when the gears really started turning, and I'm the type of person that when I do something, I have to see it through.
Mm.
I just have to, or I go crazy. Like,
Yeah,
So
that
that segues pretty
stick-to-itiveness.
well
Yeah,
into the knowing yourself side of things.
yeah.
Which I think,
So
yeah. So how did you go about that? Like, did you consciously go, I am now going to study myself, or was there something you learned
I
afterwards?
think that just from starting many projects and doing many things in my life, I always kind of approach things with, okay, well, I really need to evaluate how this is going to fit in, because I don't want to just say I'm going to do it and then not do it. So I need to know if it's going to fit into my lifestyle, and if this plan, this idea is something that's feasible for me at that moment, right? And what's going to go, what's it going to entail? So especially game design, like evaluating myself and seeing what I have. Like, you got to keep in mind, I'm coming into this and I know nothing about the industry. So
mm-hmm.
I have to say to myself, okay, that's number one. You know nothing about the industry. You need to learn. You need to understand what's going on. So that's when, you start finding Facebook groups. I was super fortunate, and Sen was actually one of the first people that ever sort of reached out to me and gave me some advice. And that was,
Same.
start searching and start understanding everybody and who's who in the industry. So I did that, and I started reading material and going on Facebook groups and just getting an idea of what it's going to take to develop and publish a game. You know, at that time, I wasn't even sure if I was going to self-publish or if I was going to take it to a publisher. I just knew that I wanted to create this game, and I knew that I had some clear sort of barriers that were in place that I needed to find ways to overcome. So that came in, those barriers were identified when I started evaluating myself and evaluating like, how much can I put into this? So
are you thinking like how much time you've got, or what your personal capacity
100%.
for things is, or like, am I actually capable of XYZ?
Yeah.
Does my brain work this way? Am I emotionally able to do this right now? Do I have too much of an other life load? Like, is it those sorts of things, or is it
100%,
like
exactly that.
which areas? If you were going to say give people a list of 3 major things that they should try and find out about themselves or understand about themselves, what do you think those 3 things might be?
Yeah, I think that the 3 things, definitely you're going to have to look at your finances. You're going to have to say to yourself, am I financially equipped to, you know, if I'm going to self-publish, can I do this with what's available with my income? How much is it going to take? So you have to look at that, and you have to understand like very much like how much you can actually put into this. And then that's sort of your budget. So that's one very important thing. You have to look at your situation, I guess, if you have a family or don't have a family, but what's going on in your life personally, like that. Like the time when I first started this project, I had 2 little boys that are now grown up, but they were just a fresh new family. So I clearly said to myself, this project was not going to impact my time with my kids and my wife. So, you know, that's making it so that weekends when, you know, a lot of times that you'd want to just sit down and jam out a design or do something, it's like, no, this is time for my kids. And I always said to myself that family and work were going to come first. And I think that's why it took 5 years to develop the game, but that was always going to be okay with me, because I knew that in my evaluation, it wasn't about, oh, I need to get this done in a year, or I need to get this done in 2 years. I have the time. This is something that I'm doing because it's a passion project.
So you've mentioned your first thing was understand your financial situation. Your second one was basically understand your situation in relation to other people
and
and
then why
like
you're
your other
doing it.
commitments and environment and things. What do you think the third one might be?
Yeah, I think the third one's definitely why are you doing this? Why
Right.
is it, what is it that you want to accomplish with this? So I told myself, for me, it was about releasing a game, kind of almost a business thing. I wanted to see what it was going to take to ship a project internationally. So that was one of my learning objectives, was to really kind of understand international logistics. So that was kind of fun. And also this kind of really super personal, but I wanted to leave my kids with an idea that, like, if you push hard and you follow your dreams, you're going to make something happen.
Yeah.
And for me,
So that's setting a good example kind of thing. And yeah, that's very valid and important.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of parents out there find that a particularly big reason that they want to do anything that they do, right?
Yeah. I really wanted to have a lesson for my kids where I can show them, like, listen, if you try hard and you put your all into something, anything's possible. Anything.
And does that feel like a lot of pressure?
Yeah.
Like, are you,
when I say it back right now, yeah, but
yeah, because I was thinking, like, for a lot of designers, it's very common to think that your first game that you actually design is the game you have to stick with, and you have to push it through, and you must publish that one. And if you don't, you're an abject failure. But realistically, for most game designers out there, your first few games are going to suck.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn from them. And sometimes some of them might actually be good enough to come back to and keep working on, but like, you know, you don't actually know who you are as a designer or how you work. And that's the thing that I learned about myself that I found really interesting, is what actually do I do and how do I design and who am I as a designer? So like, I understand where you're coming from and wanting to leave something for your kids and sort of for posterity. But do you feel that it's too much pressure to put that on yourself about this one project, or are you using that all as part of the same experimental project?
I don't think that I was necessarily in my situation saying, "Hey, this is the project that if this one doesn't go, then I'm letting myself down and I'm letting that down."
Cool.
I was more or less saying like, I know I can do this, whether it's this game that I'm developing now or it evolves and changes. That's in the future. If however the development happens, if it turns out that this isn't something that's even going to work, then we scrap it and we try something again and we just keep going because we want to at the end get to that goal of showing them that it is possible. So I wasn't so fixed on saying that it had to be this game.
Right.
Luckily for me, it turned out to be that first game. But again, it's because of many, many, many iterations with many people involved over 5 years of development. So,
yeah. And in a way, those limitations of time and capacity and so forth,
big time,
they kind of force you to work on something slowly enough that you can develop it into something successful.
Yeah.
Which isn't always the best way. Like, it doesn't suit everyone. That certainly wouldn't work for me to work on only one project for that long.
No,
what about you, Sen?
I know that it's not feasible for somebody that's running it as a business per se, but
not even that. Just talking about learning myself, like about myself. This is not how I work. I'm someone who needs to have multiple projects going all the time, so that I can just go, oh no, this one's not working right now and it's annoying me. I can just move it out of the way and then I can pick up this one and then I can do a bit of that and then I can do a bit of that. So I've always got something to distract myself with, so the other stuff can process back here. I know a lot of people where that process would be incredibly overwhelming and they would just be like, oh no, we can't be working on 20 at a time. And I'm like, only 20? How about you, Sen? I think you're somewhere in between, aren't you?
No, I can tell you what I'm working on right now. I am writing 5 RPGs, 3 to 5 board games right now. Just like today. Yeah. Today I worked on at least 10 projects. So yeah, I mean, so I mean, like, working on a project for me can be all the way from I signed a contract today for something, right? Or I wrote the rules for something, and for other things, like I play tested for an hour, or I wrote 3 pages of lore for something. So I work on a lot of games all at the same time because that's how as a freelancer you have to do it. Like if you're a publisher, you're going to focus on, especially as a self-publisher, not tons of stuff at once, right? You're going to focus on maybe 1 or 2 things, 3 things in a year until you get it kind of rolling so that you have a few projects that are ongoing all the time, right? As a freelancer, though, you need to be doing a lot of work always on the multiple things. You kind of have this workflow that continues on and on and on forever and ever and ever. Amen. Otherwise, you're not getting paid because things pay out on different scales and levels. So things like with a royalty, you're getting those on the quarter. And so every 3 months, usually, depending on the contract, I usually get quarterly payments. Some of them are every half year. Very rarely will I ever sign something that's like a year. It's like, you can do better than that. So some very few are 6 months, almost none are 1 year. Like, I don't think I have any 1-year contracts anymore. Most of them are quarterly. And so those ones are really they're not easy to live on and to plan out your life when you get like quarterly payments, right?
Yeah.
Imagine every 3 months you're at the end of every 3 months you're like wondering, like, do I have enough to like survive until that thing might come? Because publishers are notoriously bad at paying people too. Publishers out there, be better. Because people need to live on that money.
Yeah.
So, and that's the problem. I think that's the problem with freelancers is a lot of us we have something else to tide us over. So we don't necessarily need that money to live on, quote unquote, but some people do. And so we've had this kind of half culture where most freelancers have a real main job that pays them a decent amount that they can, tide them over. And then they like, if somebody's like a month late, it's not a big deal, but it should be, right? So anyways, that's me on my TTGA soapbox that publishers, be better. Pay your creatives ASAP.
The right amount on time. Do it.
Yeah, just do it. It's not hard. You have the money because you
Yeah, if you
sold
can
the
pay it a
thing.
month late, you can pay it on time.
Really, you kind of can.
Yes, you
Unless you're
can.
using the money from my project to fund some other project, which is
In
not
which case,
totally
what are
Let's
you
not
up
get started. Let's
to?
not talk. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
do
yeah.
that.
Anyway, so then I take a lot of little writing projects, and the writing projects usually are like, in tabletop RPGs, writing projects are in general. I don't take a project that's like less than 10 cents a word. And I actually don't like writing on a wordly basis, on a word by word basis, per word basis, but that's the going rate at the very lowest end that I'll ever take is 10 cents a word. And so it usually will take me like a day to write like a 5,000 word piece.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds
Um,
about right.
so I can write about I can write a yeah, I can write 1,000 words an hour easily, and then that just depends on if it's good or not, right? And then I take another half
Yeah.
the time
Then
to
there's
edit
the
it, and
editing.
then I send it in, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm making $500 a day, guys. It's more like I spend about a day doing that thing. About a day doing that length of time of writing. Whether it's all done in one day or across several days depends on the deadline, depends on how inspired I am, which is a kind of a problem being a creative. Sometimes when you're not inspired you don't get work done, which is very different than like, even as a teacher, I can do my work even when I'm in a severe depression because I just go in, I have my slides, I do my slide deck, I mark my papers, I go home. Will I be the most engaging professor that day? No, I will not. But I can't do creative work when when I'm depressed. So that was last year. The end of last year was like almost no output creatively because I was really not in a good state. So again, people out there who are thinking about freelancing, make sure you have all this kind of stuff kind of covered and you're thinking about it. So this is learning about
Yeah.
yourself in other ways, right?
Yeah.
That if you know this kind of thing about yourself, then it's the kind of thing like if you can't deal with not knowing when your next paycheck is coming in, don't go
Yes.
freelance.
Yeah. And
It's
it's not about the
difficult.
financial side of it either. It's
No.
just if it makes you too anxious
Yeah.
or all of those sorts of things. Like, I love a good deadline. I love a nice brief, but
Yeah.
sometimes you don't get those, and
No.
then it's so stressful because you're trying to get the information or you're having to chase people and you're spending so much more time than you can bill for just trying to get them to answer you. Can you handle that? Me? Nah. That's why I don't do commission work anymore because I'm just tired of having to chase people for my very reasonable payment. I mean,
Yeah.
I started off my first commission work was as an illustrator for RPGs, in the mid-90s, and I was getting paid something like $40 or $50, a line piece, like an A4 piece of line work, that I never saw again because this was a physical line work, so I have no pieces from that time, and, sometimes they didn't pay until, like, 3 or 4 weeks later, and I this was all the money I had. Yeah. So learning about yourself is also understanding like your emotional state, your mental health, how you like to work.
Yeah.
Do you like to work remotely? Do you like to work with other people? Are you willing to travel? Are you willing to go to conventions with crowds and noise? Um, there's so much to take into account. I mean, I thought that I wasn't the kind of person who wanted to do that stuff, and after a year of going to conventions, I'm like, "Yeah, no, I love this. This is what I wanna do." So, yeah, learn things about
Mm.
you, and that ties into learning about the industry and learning about board game design and all of those sorts of things, but I think you need to understand how you connect to it
Yeah.
and like, how you fit in and where you go, and that won't be something you find out straight away, but it's just like finding a new group of people to play games with, right? You'll try with one and you'll be like, "Eh, all they really wanna play is Gloomhaven, and I'm not available each week," or all they wanna play is Hearts, and I would love to play a different card game, or whatever, so
Yeah. I think also part of the learning is acknowledging your skills, sort of, and what you are going to bring, what you can and cannot do. You need to know what you can and cannot do.
Mhm.
very much. So you need to be very clear on what you're able to do and not able to do when you're
And
gonna.
what you're willing to learn
Yes,
as well.
exactly.
What was the
Because,
most? Oh, sorry, go.
oh, I was going to say, because like a lot of us can choose to learn things, but say, like, I can learn graphic design, but it's not where my skill set lives. So if I could pay someone who is skilled at this to do it, instead of it taking me 2 weeks, it could take them 2 hours, and that's money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Jim, what is the most surprising thing that you think you learned about yourself in this process of exploring whether or not you're ready to take the leap into design and publishing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The most surprising thing, I want to say it's how I've learned. I learned to trust a lot more other people and listen a lot more. I think that was sort of one of my biggest things that came out of this, because I was going into this and I knew that I didn't know anything, so I was going to have to trust a lot of different people and different things, and I had to be able to filter out sort of the right and the wrong and in all of this stuff, because the world and the internet is filled with lots of people that have ideas and comments and stuff. So which is good, which are bad,
And advice.
advice, who to listen to, who not to listen to. But I think for me, it was really down to like trusting in people, knowing the level that I was at. I knew that, going into this, I wasn't going to be able to have, board game shots, shoot my photos for my game right away. It just was not in the cards for this one. But there's probably somebody else who is new to the scene that wants an opportunity that I can engage with, and then I will be able to contract or something like that. So, and then I would have to trust in these people to do the stuff that I need to get done. So I think trust is sort of one of the big things that came out.
And it's an
Not only
important
trusting
thing,
in people, but
delegation.
trusting in myself too. Like that I know what I'm doing and that we can do this.
Yeah, not imposter syndrome. None of that. Yes, I was thinking from the trust perspective as well, like trusting what's coming in, but also trusting to pass your information out. Because one of the big things new designers struggle with is letting anyone else see what they're working on. And
Yeah,
until you do that, it's not going to get better. You
put
think
it
it's
all out there,
perfect and it's
everybody. Just
not.
put it out there.
Yeah, just get out there,
Put it out there.
learn from people saying this doesn't work for me, and accept that it doesn't work for them, and then decide whether they are the people that you need to make it work for, and all those
Yeah.
sorts of things. There's so much
Definitely where
trust.
the start learning came into play. Is like, okay, now I'm here, so let's start learning about all this stuff. Who's who in the industry? That's sort of the first thing I went to, based off of Sen's recommendation, and just started listening and learning and looking at all the groups and finding out who's who and seeing what they're doing and watching their channels and listening to like Udology and all of those great podcasts and the Maple Syrup Show, and just absorbing, absorbing.
Yeah.
That was the first, and that was a long process, but it had to be done. You have, before going out there and just jumping in forums and being like, I'm doing a game and this is the best game, blah blah blah. It's like, no, I'm just gonna sit back, listen, absorb, take in everything, make notes, and compile all that together and go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say that there are many ways to deal with this issue of lack of skill. Some people are going to do exactly what Jim did, which is sit and listen. Some people are going to jump in because maybe they're a little more uh, okay with risk and okay with failing fast and building on that. And then some people just aren't. They want to have their skill set in place before they commit to something. And then some people are in the middle or on the other side of those things. So it all depends on your personality, which again is learning about yourself, I think. So, Jim, what did you learn about game design and how did you do it other than just the podcast and things like that? Did you play a lot of games? Did you
Yeah.
help other people play test stuff? What did you do?
Yeah, definitely. So playing games was sort of the first thing that came on. It's like, okay, I'm going to start learning. I need to start playing more types of games. I can't just be playing XCOM solo and expect to go somewhere, although it's an amazing game. I'm going to have to play more games. So that was really the first thing, was just to experience games,
I
board
mean, if
games.
you have to have fun playing game, I guess you got to do it, Jim.
I did. I took one for the team.
Games aren't about fun.
I
Honestly.
learned about mechanics. I learned about the different types of games that are available. Like, you know, I learned that I was gravitating towards worker placement games as a mechanism that I loved. You know, that's just something that I learned by playing lots of games. And I learned that, you know, I enjoy co-op games, but I don't enjoy co-op games where there's just sort of one solution on the board. And, you know, there's always that sort of alpha player being like, you have to do this your turn. If you don't do this, then we're all going to die. It's like, okay, I get that, but I kind of wanted to try doing this, you know? So I learned that very quickly. You know, I like co-op games, but I like co-op games with, you know, multiple paths to victory and stuff like that. So that was the first sort of thing about learning about game design. And then I started learning, you know, by listening to the podcast and all, starting learning about the different phases of game design, you know, talking about developing, talking about prototyping, talking about play testing, all that stuff. So just absorbing how that's all done and then going out and doing it myself with what I had available.
One of the first things I did was I was like, okay, there seems to be this whole lexicon of things that people talk about that I don't understand. And I actually went, this gives you an idea of who I actually am. I went to the BGG site and I went through and I worked through every single mechanic that's listed on there, every single mechanism.
Yep.
And I read every single one, all of them. And then I went and I looked at games under each one, and I actually started working through in order. Now, the second part of this teaching you about what I'm like is then I got completely distracted and did not finish that list. So I worked through the whole list, and then I went back and I started actually trying to play games in order in that list. And I think I got 3 games, like 3 mechanisms in, and I was just like, oh, a squirrel. And I
do remember that list. I do remember that list.
Yeah, I remember that list too. It was fantastic.
It's a great list. Yeah, but yeah. In terms of New Year's resolutions, I'm one of the ones who's like, oh, January 3rd. What was I doing? So, yeah, know yourself. Are you going to stick with this thing? No. Okay, then don't put money in it.
Yeah.
Right. Or time. So I mean, so time you can, I guess, but it's still a cost, right? So assume that you have some costs that you're going to spend that you may not get some of that back. And is this something you're willing to do or able to do? So know
Do you
thyself.
get away from it regardless of whether or not you complete the thing is also really useful to know.
I think cost was a really sort of, at least in my path at the beginning, was sort of a really big thing, because I told myself, like, I will not go into debt for this. I will not, you know, take out loans. I advise lots of people listening, do not do that. Like, think smart. And I understood from my learning and that there wasn't a lot of markup and there isn't a lot of money, especially for a first-time designer, if at all, in this industry. So I knew that it was going to be about passion, and it was, you know, it was something that financially I was going to have to do slowly, and I knew that there was going to be things I had to spend on to complement the skills that I didn't have, and there was things that I could do myself. So I think, you know, that's a really big thing, is you have to sit back and say, okay, what is available to me financially, because there are some unavoidable costs if you're going to publish a game, for sure.
And of course, how you fit into the industry, which I think leads into the other topic we wanted to talk about tonight, which is learning about the game industry. And I mean, part of this is really obvious, right? Just like, pay attention to who makes what games do I like, who made that game, what publisher was it, who was the designer, what else have they done, who illustrated it, what are the different jobs, like all of that's really obvious. Like, you know, it's right there. Like, if you want to learn about the film industry, just go and read IMDb and find out all those sorts of things. So what did you do yourself to learn about the game industry?
Our best friend Jeremy Stigmeyer and his blogs and stuff like that was sort of my first place to go. That's where I got a lot of industry knowledge. And then again, just all of the podcasts, specifically on the industry, and not so much on that helped a lot. Like, just understanding the different roles that are a part of the industry and who's who in those industries, and who's doing what. I unfortunately have not been able to go to a lot of cons. Being in Canada, it's really tough. I've gone to
It's a
Ottawa.
challenge.
I've done not Breakout Con, Can Games in Ottawa, which I love. I can't speak more highly enough about that one. I try to make Breakout Con, but it falls on my son's birthday, and he's still at that age
Just
where
slightly too little to go.
slightly too little, where he would be like, "Dad's not here," you know. So unfortunately, it's really hard. But I did make one Breakout Con once, and I loved it. I would love to make more cons, but it's again, it's very, very tough. So
Well, also with the kids, like there's that
yeah,
whole balance of commitment, right? Because
exactly.
I know a lot of fellow designers who have children and who have to decide between. I mean, going to a convention isn't like, oh, I'm just going to go away for 4 hours. It's like 5 days. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And it's the cost and it's the travel time and it's or whatever. Like maybe it's only 3 days, but
yeah. So
um, that's a
just
whole thing.
but just knowing that, like evaluating that and knowing that I wasn't going to be able to do that allowed me to come up with alternatives to kind of still get that experience and still get what a con would bring. Um, there's alternatives out there. There's things you
And
can
for
do.
the people thinking about this sort of thing, some of those alternatives are things like Protospiel Online, which was
Yeah,
just this weekend just passed. And sorry, we didn't attend because of our power cut. But those sorts of things, if you're comfortable playing games online, that's another way that you can get that. There are a lot of things like there
virtual
are
tabletops are
speakers, there are
phenomenal.
like there are other ways that you can access publishers. So online speed pitches and things like that are one way to do that.
Yep.
What other ways have you come up with?
For me, yeah. So for me, it was a lot of the group, like the Discord groups, the playtesting groups, stuff like that. I've gone to a couple virtual cons up through Discord that I found was a lot of fun, a lot of value in that. So that was really primarily the biggest thing in terms of like going to cons and getting exposure.
So now that you do have a game that is made,
Mhm.
and do you have extra copies of it?
Yeah.
Are you like looking to sell at conventions this time around? What do you
So
do?
I'm in a really I would say fun spot right now because I funded my first game. I delivered to all the backers. It was a small print run of only 500 copies. I'm really proud of that we passed it and we got 500 copies out there. It's not an easy light game. It's a game for gamers that are
Mhm.
it's a more advanced game. So it's got its market, and I know its market. And I think now that all the backers have their copy, I've got the e-com store up, and now for me, 2024 is like, okay, let's get the extra inventory I have here. There's not much. There's like 60 games left. So
Well, 60 games is that'd be great if you could sell them. So if
yeah,
people out there want to look at what Jim made, what would they be searching for, Jim?
yeah, just go to randomworldgames.com
Yeah, and the
and
game that you made is titled.
Project EOS Rise.
Right, there you go. So it's a space game, right? We're out in outer space and we're doing what?
Yeah, it's a worker placement game where you are trying to find a new homeworld for humanity. It's sort of a trilogy story that I have in my head. So this is the first game of three.
Hmm.
The second one's in development right now, and yeah, it's been very well received. I've been super happy. So
Great. Roberto says Project EOS Rise is awesome. Very well balanced, always has a great tension-filled ending, which is
yeah,
something I'm literally just talking about that with somebody else right now. So, oh, that sounds good for adding tension. Highly recommend. There you go.
thank you,
Good
Roberto.
job. Yeah. So before we end the show, because we've talked for almost an hour nonstop, and you've filled it up with all this stuff. What was the thing that you learned about the industry that you thought was not true? And you're like, oh, this is true? Is there
Hmm.
anything that you found out about the industry that you had different perceptions on as maybe a gamer?
I kind of felt at the beginning the industry, just because I was looking online, it felt very sort of clicky. You know,
You're
I
not
got that
wrong.
impression, but I know, but I got that impression, and
That's
I
true, though.
I don't know. But the thing is, and maybe it's because I'm not going to cons and whatnot so much, but I don't. Everyone's been so open armed, and everyone wants to help, and everyone's been so nice. Like that's something that I think I thought that isn't maybe as predominant as I think it is.
So I
I think
think
it's both.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's both. So I think especially online, people are very willing to help each other. Like everybody is probably willing to help each other. I think in person it's a little bit different because you gotta have the vibe with the people to actually spend time with them in person. So there's definitely people who I will. I'm not saying we're a clique, but there's definitely people who I
Your
sleep in the same
friends.
bed as, right? Like I sleep
Yeah.
in the same bed as the people who I'm really good friends with, um, because we're sharing the hotel room or something like that. There are people who I will eat meals with, right? There are people who I will game with. There are people who I will, um, you know, give help to. I'll give help to anybody, but will I eat a meal with everybody? Will I share a room with anybody? No, that's as you get more and more intimate and more into personal time, I guess it does get a little bit more clicky because those are the people who you actually were there to see, right?
Yeah.
I go to conventions to see the friends that I don't get to see daily.
That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, so I do get it when people say, "Oh, it's a little bit of a cool kids club." But I think
I
there's
mean,
lots of little cool kids clubs. There's not just
there's
one cool kids
definitely
club.
an element of that, but,
Yeah.
I think my advantage is I'm a Kiwi and I don't care. So I'm just like, "G'day. Hi, can I sit down with you lot?" And they're like, "I guess so." And then that happens. Because Kiwi culture is generally less clicky. But, I've certainly seen, a bunch of people that I've also met at conventions who've just been like, "How did you get to talk to those people?" And I was like,
I
"I
opened
just
my mouth.
I
did.
said
I just
hello.
went over and I said, 'Hi, I know you from the internet. I'm Cat.'" And they said, "Hi, Cat. Yes, I know you from the internet too. Let's talk." People I think one of the things that I thought was true is that people got paid more initially. I thought
They
people
don't get
got
paid more.
paid more. That's not true.
And so I do think that is changing slightly.
I love
Um,
that.
and it's so like I said before, 10 cents a word is the lowest I will take. I often get paid more. And that the 10 cents a word, like there are companies that were paying like 3 cents a word. There were companies that were paying 1 cent a word.
I've been offered 2 cents a word before.
Right? And it's awful, and that's not fair
I was like,
compensation, right?
"No."
And there are companies now that recognize that, hey, if we do really well, the creatives who actually created this work should also gain some benefit from that. So there's a company out there that I can't name them, but I have a contract with them that I got paid my writing fee. But if the game sells X number of copies, I'll get a bonus, and if it sells X times five number of copies, I'll get another bonus. That kind of thing. So scales or ladder clauses are really important. Anyways, that's all sorts of stuff that we can talk about at a later date. But we're here with Jim
But the
right now.
real, when you look at how much a game sells for, right? You think, "Oh, so in New Zealand, I would pick up one of these proper
Oh,
hobby
right, yeah,
board
yeah.
games."
Where you're getting like it's a
And I
ninety
pick
dollar
up I
game or
look at the
whatever.
game and it's $80, $90, and I'm like, "Damn, that's expensive. Wow, they must make good money out of this."
Yeah.
Because I know what retail markups are, and I'm thinking at least some of that must go to the designer. And then I find out that
Um,
from that 80 or 90 New Zealand, they're getting dollar.
yeah, yeah, right. And the thing is that I mean, a lot of it is just eaten up in shipping costs and things like that.
Absolutely.
But
And all of
also,
the other costs.
that like it's easier mathematically to deal with warehousing costs is where your warehouse cost, which is like very low, right? Versus
Mhm.
whatever you might sell it to the person at the end for. The MSRP can be fudged, right? But your landed cost is what your landed cost is. And so a lot of people will base their royalties on things like warehousing costs, which is the landed cost in a way, right? So anyway, Jim,
Yeah.
what else did you learn about the industry?
It's 5 years of just so much. I think like
What would you tell 5 years ago, Jim? If you
Yeah.
could just give him, like, one piece of advice about learning about the industry so he could shortcut something, what would you tell him?
proto, don't spend money until you've got a game that is like, don't spend money on building a prototype until you've locked the game solidly with lots and lots of playtesting. I have I can tell you stories of components that I thought I needed to get polished, and
We've all
then
done that.
I know, but I'm vowing from this day forward, I will not ever visit any sort of site that produces components for games until I'm
I cannot
completely.
test it without custom dice. Yes, you
No,
can.
you can.
Yes, you can.
You can
You
also
can.
test it with that art, Cat.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you
The wink,
can.
wink,
Okay.
wink, wink, Cat.
Oh no, but that's part of my process of
I know.
designing it.
Yeah.
I do. I have a
And
game currently.
you can make the art yourself. That's the difference.
Exactly. But no,
Yeah.
I have a game right now where we are testing with a deck of standard playing cards.
No, you're
Yeah.
not. That doesn't sound like a Cat.
It's one of
I would
my
say
games.
too,
I
like
designed it on the train, and it is using only a deck of playing cards. And yes, the illustrations are already happening in my head, but I have not illustrated it yet. That's
I think
right.
something I learned
That's
too. I
new
learned
for
this.
2024, everybody.
Yeah, I think something
So cool.
as well that I learned, and I learned this from Roberto, is you can make a really high quality prototype with just materials found around, like staples and stuff like that. Like you don't need to print this messed up. You can make really high quality prototypes. And I don't know if you've seen his game. It's
The
just
Gems
looks
of
fantastic.
Iridecia, yes.
Looks fantastic.
Oh yeah, yep. I've played it. It's good.
Yeah,
There
that
you
prototype is nice.
And
Sure.
yes, George is weirded out by my playing card prototype, and he's right. It's very strange.
Yeah. Well, everybody,
Right.
you know what? Welcome back
Ding.
to Maple Syrup. It is 2024. I have to go pick up my wife. It is 10 o'clock, and it's cold out, and the wolves are howling, so I got to go get her. So we're going to shut down the feed, but we'll be back next week. In the meantime, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Sen-Foong Lim. Kat, where can people find you?
Ink everywhere.
Everywhere. And at
On all
Maple
the
Syrup
things.
on all the things.
Yes.
Jim, you are available by email at info at Random World Games, right?
You got it. Yep.
And if you want to find Project EOS Rise, EOS, is it pronounced EOS?
EOS, yeah.
Okay. Does that stand for something?
The Greek goddess of dawn.
Oh, okay. Cool. Dawn Rising, get it. I got it. randomworldgames.com. And if you want to support us, you can check out the Patreon, patreon.com/maple syrup. Keep the lights on over here. Jim, do you have any final advice for people?
Yeah, I'd say if you're gonna start, if you're starting your first board game and you have a burning passion and you're not sure if you can do it, I think spend that time evaluating why you want to do it and how you're going to do it, and know that it's possible. Dreams can come true. So
yeah, I really like that advice. That's great. We also believe in you, and we will help you if you reach out to us. Right? I think that's the other thing that helps people know that they're not alone, is that the board game design community, while it might be cliquey in person, I'm not going to say it's not. We're very helpful online.
Fantastic.
You just have to be willing to take feedback, and it might not be the kind
do
of
the work,
feedback, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Do the work.
You gotta have tough skin, and you gotta learn from every bit of information that's thrown at you.
Yeah,
and I mean, to put in to contribute. Don't just ask for stuff.
Yes.
Like give back.
You give
100%.
back to the community, and I mean, like, it's not great that you need tough skin. We would prefer if people were nicer with their feedback or kinder with their feedback, is probably a better way to say that. However, some people are going to give you really great feedback. They just might deliver it in a way that you don't appreciate. So figure out how to process all of that, I think, is an important part of being an artist in any way, shape, or form. And this is definitely at least 50% of an art, and then 50% of craft. I don't know. And a lot of science and math and psychology and everything. Anyway, next week, Kat, who do we have coming on the show next week?
We have got my friend Sasha. So Sasha is the person who is in charge of Playtest PDX and will be telling us what it has been like setting up a playtesting organization and why you should do it too.
Yeah, PDX. Playtest
Portland,
PDX.
Oregon.
Yeah. Awesome. And just a note, Roberto says, le forêt du dollar store is a gold mine. So that's Dollar Tree.
It's called la forêt du dollar.
Oui.
I love that. I'm
Right?
sorry. It's extremely cute.
It is. That sounds like a game in the making, really.
It
Right?
does.
Cat's like, oh yes, it does. All right,
La
everybody.
folie
It
de
was
la-
so lovely to see you. My wife is cold. I have to go pick her up. We'll see you
Okay.
later.
Okay,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.